Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and this is the Storyteller Forecast for Aries for June 2018. Go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, check out what's new on my blog, and if you'd love to learn astrology, either for personal or professional use, then my Astrology Apprenticeship program will start enrolling again June 1st. So what's going on in the month of June? We have eclipse rumblings. Eclipse time brings major trajectory changes. Sometimes they're sudden, dramatic endings, amazing accomplishments, fruition, can bring new golden opportunities, doors flying open with possibilities. So even though the eclipses don't start till July, we have 2 in July and 1 in August, we often feel those manifestations 4 to 6 weeks before the actual eclipse. So June, even the end of May, but June is definitely prime time for some energetic possibilities with these eclipses. So the way I'm going to do this is, for this June report, I'm going to focus on the first eclipse and where Aries will see that show up in their Aries chart. That's the partial solar eclipse at 20 degrees of Cancer. July 27th, we have a lunar eclipse at 4, almost 5 degrees of Aquarius. I'll cover where that will show up for Aries in the July report, and then in the August report, I'll do the partial solar eclipse at 18 degrees of Leo. Okay, so between these 3 reports, you can get a peek into how these energies might manifest for you. So something to be aware of that I want to talk about before we get into the eclipse things is that Mars is actually going retrograde this month. I've been talking about it for so long. We started the shadow period May 11th. The shadow period is a period of time before the retrograde where things start brewing. I always liken these shadow periods to the process of a U-turn. When you know you're going to make a U-turn, you slow down and then you come to a stop and you have to regain speed. So the time before the U-turn where you're slowing down and there's that awkwardness and you're, it's slowing down basically, but you didn't actually make the U-turn yet, that's the shadow time before the actual transit. So from May 11th through the rest of May, all through most of June until the 26th, we're in that awkward slowing down time where the manifestation is starting, but it's not fully full-fledged transit yet. Mars retrograde is important for everyone to know. This happens only once every 2-ish years, okay? And it's for a long cycle. So May 11th through October 11th is when the full cycle is. June 26th through August 26th is the actual retrograde, and then June 26th through October 11th is the rest of the shadow. But Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is your ruler, our ruler. I have Aries rising. Okay, so this transit takes on special importance for you. So it's important for you to be very educated about it and understand this because you want to have the best possible experience with this. And the more you know about it, and that when you apply what you know, the better it can be. I personally have come to love Mars retrograde because I understand it and I play by the rules of the Mars retrograde. And so I have a very pleasant, wonderful time of it. And I want you to do that too, okay? Aries energy by nature is ambitious, it's driven, it's assertive. And when we try to apply that way of being in a Mars retrograde, often the result is the theme of a Mars retrograde, which is frustration. Because when Mars is in retrograde, we're not supposed to be being our normal selves. We actually have permission to chill out. We have license to just relax. And if you're trying to do the way you do, usually during that time, you're going to end up being frustrated because you're going to have this wall of resistance to everything that you do. Now, there are some caveats. There's one major caveat to this, where if you have Mars retrograde at birth, you could have an opposite experience of this. So we have to leave room for the possibility of this. It's going to be lesser common. But if you were born with Mars retrograde, you might be by nature not very driven and not very ambitious. But then all of a sudden, every 2 years, maybe you haven't noticed it as a cycle, but when Mars goes retrograde, you might come alive when everything else is going backwards. If that's the case, you might have a different flow with this. That's why I always talk about following your own personal flow to supersede anything that an astrologer or anybody else says, because how energy runs through us individually is way more complicated than we can account for in general transits. So you could be one of these people, okay? So if you're trying to do things and they're working out and everything is super easy during the retrograde time, then maybe you're one of those exceptions. But for the most part, most Aries will without knowing what's going on, be pushing up against things, get frustrated, get angry, which is a keynote of Aries energy, and have to deal with that. But if you schedule trips, schedule relaxation, schedule no having projects, schedule not having agendas, just being able to go with the flow and respond to things that come to you, then you can have an amazing time. And then you can rest, and you might have some really amazing ideas that you can push forward in the future during this time. Okay, so definitely educate yourself more about it. Do a search for Annie Mars retrograde, and I have a video and a blog about this so that you can get even more information and just really try to understand this energy. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about for you all is where this partial solar eclipse at 20 degrees of Cancer is occurring for you. In general, this eclipse is going to be at a challenging angle to Aries placement. So if you have an Aries placement around 20 degrees, if your birthday is 20 days into the sign, around that, give or take a few days, like within 5 degrees in either direction. So if your birthday is 15 to 25 days into the sign, you'll feel this most. Or if you have a placement in your chart with Aries, that's your sun or a different one, between 15 and 25 degrees, but especially closer to 20 degrees, this eclipse is going to square that. Squares can bring challenges, can bring difficulties, and can bring angst or something to overcome, we'll call it. You know, whenever we have a challenging aspect, it's not happening to torture us. It's happening because there's something that we have to shift in order to step into our highest version of ourselves. And so an eclipse that's at a challenging angle to one of our Aries placements can bring this something to overcome, a challenge to overcome, something to learn, an obstacle to work with. Okay, so you may see that come up. At the same time, you might see just an ending or something new involving the 4th house. And this is for all early, middle, and late degree placements. We will all feel this energy in the 4th house, okay? So this eclipse is going to activate endings, beginnings, new possibilities, changes involving home and family. So this can be involving a house, involving housing, involving real estate, involving doing things to our house. It could involve also things involving mother, or family in general, or a family member, or how we relate to family. It can be something that has to do with a childhood issue, like childhood psychology issues, things that happened in our childhood that are affecting us now that could come up that's unresolved. But it could, you know, so like I said, there could be challenge there, or there could just be sweetness where there is something new that happens in our house. You know, we do an improvement, maybe not a major improvement because that's not necessarily favorite at this time, but sprucing up, adding something we wanted for home comes in a magical way. This time in general that we're stepping into for June and July and August, and even some of September and the beginning of October, has to do with being the spider. Okay, so spiders don't usually go out and aggressively get their food. They make their web and then they hang out and their food comes to them. Okay, so this time, you'll hear me talking about this over the coming months, is a time to be the spider. Okay, so when it has to do with home or family things or whatever, you've already done your work for the most part. Okay, you might have to do a little bit more work and try to focus that more at the beginning of June, if possible. But now's the time to sit back and reap the rewards for the things you've done. So things with your home life, things with your family life, things with real estate, things with your inner work. You may have done a lot of work before, and then the Mars retrograde transit can bring the rewards to you. And eclipses tend to be a time to be the spider anyway, because it's not a great time to initiate. It's a time to leave space to respond to the things that are likely going to come to you. You have to do something with them. They'll require attention and energy and focus. And if you're trying to push these other things, you're not going to have the energy or focus or patience to do what you need to do. Something I've mentioned before, but I want to especially mention this again, and this is true for everybody, but especially people with Aries placements. Being on all the time decimates your nervous system. Okay, so we need to rebuild our nervous system. And one of the best ways to do that is with a supplement called magnesium bisglycinate. I'm not a doctor. There are situations where it's not appropriate to take magnesium, or you have to watch the doses of magnesium, including when you're pregnant. You have to watch the doses of magnesium, and there may be situations where you have to work with your practitioner, do your own research, and you have to tune into your own body to see if this is true for you. Most people are deficient in magnesium. Even if you're taking ionic magnesium, which I've recommended in the past, absorption of magnesium is not an easy task for the body. And storage of magnesium is not common. Most people do not have good blood cell storage of magnesium. So, magnesium bisglycinate is a version that is stabilized, that can be drawn into the cells and be stored. And you might be able to sleep better. You might be able to be more patient. Aries energy is not patience. Patience in motion. We have a lot of virtues, but patience is not on the list of the things that are usually strong points for us naturally. And part of that is because our nervous system is overtaxed because of the way we are, because of the way we create life, because of how we do things. Okay, so look into magnesium bisglycinate, and it could completely change your life. It could completely heal things that were troublesome for you, and also it can help you ease into and really embrace this Mars retrograde, which is this time we have every 2 years to just fully relax and recharge and let inspiration come to us in that quiet space rather than in that action place. Okay, so those are the things most on my mind for Aries. It's the energy of basically strengthening your roots, your family roots, your home roots, your own grounding, physical roots, grounding your system. And so now I'm going to talk about other dates to note in the month, things to watch out for, my favorite times, more about Mars retrograde, and also more about some general implications of the eclipses, which you will find to be the same as I did for your report, because the sign of Cancer, which rules home and family, is in the house of Cancer for Aries placement. So you'll hear that twice, but it's just doubly true for you. And then we'll also talk about some other aspects to note this month. So I'm calling the theme of June 2018 for all signs, the magical act of releasing attachment, with a sub-theme or sub-themes of recreation and recreation. This abundance of air energy this month is going to bring a lot of restlessness, this need to move, variety seeking, the urge to communicate and connect will be very strong. And there will be many opportunities for this as well. So trips, travel, near and far, sparkling conversations, chances to connect with people online and in person, a lot of busyness. People often notice when the sun is in Gemini and at this time of year, we've got a lot of busyness. You'll see that things are ramped up. You're here, you're there, you're moving around. There's lots of things that you're trying to pull together. And also interests in things can be coming up and could be all over the board. The urge to move and express will be increased from this energy, but for many people, the desire for movement will be towards recreation rather than productivity. And this is compliments of the impending Mars retrograde transit. We've been talking about this for a long time. I've been prepping you for this. And of course, you can look at my blog, Your Guide to Mars Retrograde, and you can look at my video on the topic. You can just put in Annie Botticelli Mars Retrograde, and you'll pull up my other resources to go deeper into this. But for the most part, for most people, ambitions start to wane. Okay, so the key theme that occurs so much in Mars retrograde is frustration. But it doesn't have to be that way. That only happens if you're trying to go at your usual pace. In that transit, that's not wanting you to do that. So if you take cues from what's happening and you stop trying to force things, like dropping your agenda, this is one of the reasons why I'm calling this the theme this month, the magical act of releasing attachment. If you drop your agendas, then you can flow more. If you give yourself permission to chill, then the odds of frustration will be much less because you're not trying to push up against this wall of energy that's pushing backwards. So there are some people, however, that have the opposite effect when Mars is in retrograde. Mars rules movement, and some people, and how you use your energy. It rules the assertiveness, you know, that get up and go, your oomph. So if you were born with Mars retrograde in your natal chart, you might have the opposite effect when Mars goes into retrograde. You might be what some people might call lazy or laid back or not ambitious most of the time. But then something crazy happens, maybe you haven't known what it was until now, then Mars retrograde comes and you get lit up while everybody else is going the other way. So that's why I always say, above everything, you have to honor your own personal flow and your intuition when you're listening to horoscopes, because there are always caveats to the general things that we share through horoscopes. So in any case, I always like to give you the heads up, because if you notice yourself getting what you describe as lazy, and then you're trying to give yourself a hard time about it, you can make this month and this transit, which runs from the end of June to the end of August, but really it started May 11th when the shadow period started, and it goes through the beginning of October. This is a long time. So if you understand this is going on, it's more likely that you can give yourself permission to relax. And if you give yourself permission to relax, pure genius can come to you when you're in that relaxed state. The way I like to describe the magic that can happen with this energy is with a typical story. I know myself, I've heard many situations where, let's say a couple is trying to have a baby and they're having trouble getting pregnant, and there's so much stress and there's pressure and they're putting it on and they're worried, and all of this energy is going towards this certain outcome. Then when they make the decision to adopt, sometimes they get pregnant. And the doctors chalk it up as the stress was released from the venture, right? So this is the energy that I want you to remember during this time, because a massive amount of magic, a massive amount of inspiration can come from that quiet time, like the Shavasana at the end of a yoga session. That quiet little short time of integration, of rest, integrates all of the work done prior. And very often when Mars is in retrograde, work that you've done before comes to you. So this energy of being like a spider that's going to be a theme that continues for a while, where you've done work, now you're letting everything come to you, is a good one to follow. Now, if you do have some things that you have to push through, and you don't want to wait until December when we're done with Mars retrograde, then Mercury retrograde, then Venus retrograde, then there are some points here in June where you could do that. And my favorite days are right in the beginning of the month. But I'll go into more details about that. But if you do have some things that you have to push through and you feel that they're, intuitively it's time to do it, then you might be able to take advantage of that energy. Okay, so I really love this month for vacations, because this desire to rest and slack makes an increase in the possibility that you'll enjoy the vacation and you'll leave your worries and work behind. So if you are a traveler, or you're planning a trip, or you just like to read about travel stuff, you can check out my website, Astrology Kissed Travel Bliss, and I do monthly astrology travel reports so that you can understand some highlights as far as it relates to travel, and there are also fun blogs and inspiration for travel. There's a new moon on June 13th, and this is another increase in this opportunity for travel, adventures near and far, connecting with siblings, cousins, and other relatives. If you have to make a last minute purchase of a communication device, if you know that coming soon your car or your phone or something is due to get, if you're due to get a new one, this time around, the beginning of the month or around this new moon of the 13th, might be a good time to squeeze these things in, because Mars rules metal. And it's one of the, of course it's complicated, but things that are made of metal are under the rule of Mars. So buying machinery, utilizing machinery, and of course everything has metal in it, all of our devices. The energy is better for it when we're further away from the retrograde. So if you can help it, sometimes you might not be able to help it, in which case don't worry, just go with the flow. But if you know it's coming, you might want to take advantage of this this time in the middle of the month. So increasing your recreation time is a great goal. If you're going to have any goals during this time, it would be goals to have more fun and goals to relax and goals to take vacations and even goals to study, but in a laid back, leisurely way. You know, this is a time that can greatly favor education, but especially in flexible programs that allow you to go at your own pace so that if you turn out to lose some ambitions, that you're not penalized. If you're interested in education that feels more like a hobby rather than a stressful obligation, then it's very well indicated during this Mars retrograde, because we could see that as part of a focus on recreation. You might notice a slowdown in work, finances, romance, etc. But like I said, there is an amazing chance for you to reap rewards from the past. So things may slow down in some senses, but things from the past could come to fruition now without you even doing anything, and it might seem quite magical. If you have to do some work-related things, it's better to focus on clients from the past, ideas from the past, things like that, if at all possible. These retrogrades tend to make things get called into question. So things that were set or intended may drastically change form during this time or become irrelevant or uninteresting. So just notice the cycle, and just because something isn't, kind of goes away from your energy field at this time, it doesn't mean it's forever. I know I personally have Aries rising and Mars rules Aries, so I notice that I'm very much affected by this transit. Everybody's affected by it, but people with Aries and Scorpio placements, strong Aries and Scorpio placements, you notice it more because Mars rules Aries and co-rules Scorpio. But I've noticed that I just love this energy because it helps you to relax. And whenever this happens now, I plan my rests for this time. But if you didn't know that this were coming, you might think, wow, what is happening to me? I'm like this. So I feel like when Mars retrograde, like, wow, I'm never going to be ambitious again. That's so weird. And then as soon as Mars goes direct, I'm back to my normal ambitious self. So it's just interesting to watch your own personal cycles with this. And as I mentioned before, you might have the opposite occur, and notice that too. Learning astrology and using astrology is one big experiment, and the more you learn about what's going on and then you pay attention to your personal flow with that, the more you learn about the art and the science. Okay, so many people are going to be questioning many things in life, but there will be a special focus for the job, profession, life path because of the time that Mars is going to spend getting back into Capricorn. And since it spends most of the time retrograde in Aquarius, this strong focus on reconsidering or considering for the future, defining or redefining projects or relationships involving nonprofits, humanitarian efforts, technology, and other futuristic innovations, groups, things having to do with groups and teams and friends and friendships and acquaintances, social circles, and social media are all within this Mars and Aquarius energy. You might notice a lot of push and pull between home and work, home and family, mother and father, because we have a notable amount of oppositions between the Cancer and Capricorn energy. So this can bring a lot of overstimulation between home and family and work and your place out in the world. Overstimulation doesn't necessarily mean bad or good. It's just that there are opposing forces that are both demanding equal and extra focus, which can make you feel torn between these competing interests. But we do also have some great aspects with Uranus that can bring amazing insights and breakthroughs or happy surprises. So there are many times in this month where beautiful aspects are coupled with challenging ones. So good news and challenges could present simultaneously. You might see that going on. Okay, so the energy of this Cancer eclipse, we talked about where it would hit for you personally in your chart, but the general energy that everyone has this increased chance of experiencing is having to do with housing, home, and other family opportunities will likely be a dominating theme. There's something that a dermatologist said to me recently that I always wind up applying these random things to astrology, So she said that there's an increase in skin cancer risk for people who have light colored eyes, that there's something genetic about that relationship. Okay, so that doesn't mean that all people who have light colored eyes are going to get skin cancer, and it doesn't mean that all people who don't have light colored eyes are not. But this increase in probability is how I always frame astrology. There's an increase in probability of the things that these transits tend to bring. And it doesn't mean that everybody's going to experience these things that are common. It just means there's an increase in probability. You know, the odds are more likely. Like on a day when the meteorologist says, rain is 90% today. Sometimes it doesn't rain, you know? But there's that increased chance. And that's what I want you to understand about the nature of these transits and the nature of these potentials. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of other dates to highlight this month. And if you want more details about dates and transits of note, then definitely go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com. Sign up for my free email newsletter. You can also sign up at cozybysweetstarlight.com, which is where I also have written horoscopes, cozybysweetstarlight.com. If you sign up at either of those places for my free newsletter, I write a monthly write-up with more details about these general transits in a written version a month ahead than I give in the video. Okay, so it supplements what we're going to do here. If you have to do anything in June, important, money, love, beauty choices, anything that you have to do, the creative projects, anything important. I love the first several days of the month. We've got beautiful Venus and Jupiter trine, and then Venus trines Neptune. So that's my favorite time of the month, besides the middle of the month, the 13th, with that new moon in Gemini. We've got a little bit of challenging energy after that, like the 5th through the 7th. Logic bumping up against intuition and some challenges there. Definitely take a moment to center yourself before walking, driving, biking, etc. And try to resist the urge to text while biking or text while walking or text while driving, because this energy increases the odds of accidents. You want to be paying attention more. There's another sweet spot here in the middle of the month where I told you the new moon on the 13th. And then there's a nice aspect between Mercury and Uranus, but at the same time, there's a challenging one with Venus and Uranus. And some other challenges there in the middle of the month. We've got another sweet spot, June 19th through the 20th, when Mercury makes a trine to Jupiter. And then we have Mars going retrograde on the 26th. When a planet goes retrograde, there's a lot of awkwardness. So just look out for awkwardness around that time. Then there's the full moon in Capricorn on June 27th, and this will bring completion, fruition, accomplishment, or drama into the realms of work, career, father figures, and your place out in the world. So those are the things that are most on my mind for this month. Definitely check out my websites, anniehelpsyou.com, if you're interested in learning astrology as a profession or just for your self-development. If you'd like to be a coach, I have a coach training program. I have an astrology apprenticeship program. I also have a course called Creating Successful Online Business, where I teach you how to create an online presence and funnel it into your services that will help you to live the life that you want and not be geographically bound. If you want written horoscopes that are focusing on different areas than the videos that I make, then go to cozybysweetstarlight.com. If you would like to get information about astrology travel reports that I write for each month, then go to astrologykissedtravelbliss.com. And definitely check out my husband's website, iamhelios.com, iamhelios.com, for wonderful astrology and tarot readings. He also has some really cool free offerings on his site that bring sound vibrations that you can download that help to soften the energies of the current transits. So that's something really cool he's doing. So I hope you have a wonderful month, and I'll see you next month. Bye.